67 was presented to me when I was a kid, but mostly by my grandparents that were born and raised in Detroit and grew up, my grandmother on the east side, my grandfather on the west side. And that was a moment that was really, really like this huge, huge period of time for them and their entire family. My grandfather grew up in the cities, both my grandparents did, but then he had become a teacher in the public school system for a long time. And it was this pivotal moment of everybody just didn't know what to do. It was like this terrifying period of time, and then everybody kind of just left. And that was right around the time they left the city as well. And it was presented like that to me as a kid. But growing up, we would always come back into Detroit and go back and forth, and my parents ended up spending a lot of time downtown. But it was always presented to me as a magical place. Like as a kid, I was 5 years old when I went and saw Heidelberg for the first time before it got torn down by the city. And I thought it was the coolest thing in the entire world. And it wasn't about being afraid of the city or what was going on in Detroit. It was, this is the coolest place that you could ever spend time. And that was how I was raised. A lot of Southwest Detroit, a lot of Hamtramck, a lot of Heidelberg, a lot, like all of that for most of my childhood. My family, like I said, there was that fear from that time period, and that kind of trickled down the generations, and my parents were even worse than they were. And they weren't raised in Detroit. They had no context. They weren't there when tanks were rolling down the street. And my grandparents still felt that Detroit was a beautiful place and that they were never afraid, and they never wanted me to be afraid of going into the city. But it was amazing that even once I talked about, moving and getting a different apartment, they were like, okay, do you have the right amount of security and all of this? And it's amazing when I started to talk to people, especially traveling, that I was from Detroit or lived downtown. They're like, okay, so where? And where do you live? I'm like, no, I live in Detroit. They're like, where? Like they're expecting me to talk about a city that's 2 hours away. And it always came with a joke at the end. Oh, that must be hard. Or like just, people had this immediate misconception that it was somehow terrifying, dangerous, or a post-apocalyptic wasteland that somehow people managed to live in. And I think for me, I've seen that change, especially in the last 5 to 6 years. As I travel more and more, the response, especially outside of Michigan, goes from, oh, that scary place that I saw on the picture cover of Time magazine one time, goes into, oh, I heard that's really exciting. Where are you? Are you like, are there other artists, or what kind of building are you in? And now it's this excitement and this interest in a way that was before shut down by fear is now opened up again by the thrill of seeing something change and come back in a way that no one else has experienced before. Revitalization has to start somewhere, but at the same time, a lot of people are just completely feeling left behind. And it just needs to be a balance. I understand that the core needs to be taken care of, but that spread needs to happen sooner rather than later. Because it's, how are we expecting people to be able to get to work and be able to, afford a car or be able to support their kids or take their kids to great schools if those areas are just kind of desolate? I remember in the beginning when I first started an empowerment plan, the motto was, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. And it was just like, we'll build it and we'll figure it out as we go along, and like we'll probably make a ton of mistakes and make a lot of people angry, but we'll figure it out. And everybody just kind of banded together in that. And I think what motivates me even more now is that in the beginning that was exciting, but now there's infrastructure behind it. There's the beginning of that. And I love that there's a lot of new restaurants and a lot of new music venues, and all that stuff is very exciting. For me, what's going to be exciting is the police force getting the amount of support, or the fire department having a better response time, and like the public schools being a place that, I would want to have my kids be raised in if I have children, to be able to stay in a city and to be able to help transform the city into something that my generation won't just like for a little bit of time and thrive in for a short amount of period, but that they want to be here for generations. And that's the thing for me. That's exciting, is to see the change start to happen block by block, even around the building that we're in now. It used to be 80% abandoned buildings, and it's just like these homes that were just left. And now there's one on the entire block that still needs work, and that happened within the first couple of years. So it's exciting to see that ripple effect, but it's even more for me, driving me forward, is to see the deeper infrastructure change that needs to happen in order to make this city successful in the long run and to really help the people that we're trying to help. For us at Empowerment Plan, it's all about generational poverty and systemic poverty. So we're looking to help parents so that the kids are raised differently and that they never have to experience what their family went through before them. Public transit is so important for every single one of our employees to get to work, for every single person to be able to rise up this income ladder. They got to start somewhere. If you can't afford a car right now, you almost can't get around. It's heartbreaking. You just I want to hire you, but how are we going to get you to work every day reliably? And how do you get to that point, especially from individuals, let's say, that have experienced homelessness, get enough money to be able to afford a vehicle? And that's how, the city shouldn't depend on that. So getting that public transportation right and having it reach into those communities, not just the kind of the main strip, but have it reach out into the city, is going to be exciting to see that happen. It would be the greatest thing in the world. And then just really taking a very, very hard look at how we look at public education and how we make sure that we're not creating people and setting them up to be dependent or fail down the road, and that they get the best opportunity in the world.